Now that the U.S. Supreme Court has left it up to the states to regulate sports betting, what will Massachusetts do? Representative Joseph Wagner is expected to lead the charge as the chairman of the Joint Committee on Economic Development and Emerging Technologies, and he joined me in the studio to discuss what it could mean for the state.
That has states now in a position that would want to entertain the idea of looking at implementing laws that would allow for and regulate sports betting to now move forward to do that. And in Massachusetts, the Speaker and I have had a number of conversations since the decision, and my advice has been, and he doesn't need me to tell him.
You were very involved in the lead up to whether or not casino gambling would come forward here in Massachusetts.
Bill came out of my committee back in 2011, and so I think the approach here is to move this to the front burner, but to not move so quickly that we get it wrong.
And the House Speaker said recently that this matter will not be taken up during the session. But given that it was pretty much known that the Supreme Court was going to come down this way, why didn't Massachusetts look at this issue along the lines of maybe New Jersey or other states that really was ready to go when the decision came out?
I would say this about other states that have moved. Rhode Island has done something. Connecticut has done something. So in the case of Rhode Island, they actually have budgeted monies for the coming fiscal year based around a concept that would have the Rhode Island casinos overseeing sports betting. The state lottery would oversee it, but that it would be run through the existing bricks and mortar casino facilities that they have. We're still looking to see what Rhode Island will offer in terms of detail. And they haven't enacted a law that supports the conceptual framework, notwithstanding that the governor put something in the budget. So I don't really think we're behind the curve on this, and I'm not sure that we'd be any further ahead. Had we gone down the road of trying to put something in place without knowing what that decision would have been, we might just have been unraveling something. We didn't know whether the court would eliminate the ban in part or in whole. It was in whole versus in part. So those kinds of considerations we couldn't really anticipate in a way that had us being able to try to get out front.
A moment ago, though, when you said you were sort of waiting and listening, obviously, to see what the Supreme Court did, you said hopefully they would come down on this side. So is that your way of saying that you think that this is a good thing, a good fit for Massachusetts?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I think, though, that when we do a budget every year and we're looking to balance spending against projected revenues, in all of my years in the legislature, that's been a tremendous challenge. And almost without exception, non-discretionary spending in the state budget increases beyond projected increases in revenues. So this could fit into that kind of bucket where here's an opportunity perhaps, and we've got to balance not only the revenue gains but any costs associated with it. Things like public safety, problem gambling, impacts to the state lottery, which is $1 billion industry in and of itself.
Money is then diverted to the casino is the thought, instead of maybe scratch tickets or other products.
No question. I mean, so in the case of casinos, we tried to be thoughtful and built into the law that anyone with a license to operate a casino, or in the case of the single slots facility in Plainridge, that they would have to offer lottery products as well. And we've seen in the case of the slots facility that lottery revenues are up significantly in the area where the slots facility is online, and we think it's attributable to the decision to have the slots facility offer lottery products. So those are the kinds of things we want to make sure we get right if we look at sports wagering as well. And I can tell you that I go to national conferences involving gaming, and every state looks to Massachusetts as the model. Particularly with respect to resort casinos.
But to your point about, whether that's scratch tickets or, other lottery revenue being up in that way, in addition to the casino gaming that's going on, does that then point to, we know that gambling is an addictive thing, and if we've seen a spike in the number of people who are spending money on these types of things, do we need to also then be looking at what the rates of addiction and gambling addiction are as a result of this?
We do that, and again, I think we've built appropriately safeguards into the legislation that brought online the new industry, which is resort casinos and the slots facility. The data collection, the analysis that will be done we began to, and the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, which oversees all of this in Massachusetts, began to look at some of the issues that you just raised that are of concern, so that we would be ahead of the curve. And there will be an ongoing analysis for as long as these casinos are operating, and we anticipate they'll be operating, for decades and decades. We think we are ahead of the curve with respect to some of the social ills and other costs.
One more point about the money. The Las Vegas Review-Journal reported that $400 billion was put toward illegal sports betting. And then the Massachusetts State Gaming Commission even says that they think that the Massachusetts cut could be between $9 million and $61 million. That's a big gap.
Yeah.
Any sense of what the actual number could be if Massachusetts decides to move forward with this?
They have a metric that has them realizing the low of 8 and the high of 61. And it's based on 3 categories that they suggest could be considered in the state. The first would be where you just have bricks and mortar. So the existing facilities, the 2 that are coming online, MGM and Wynn, along with the Plain Ridge facility, that if you did that, and depending on the tax structure, and they give, so the metric is 3 different levels of authorization at each of 3 different tax rates. So if it's just bricks and mortar, and you do the lowest tax rate of, they suggest 6.75, that would yield between $8 and $9 million. If you took the third metric, which would be the casinos, retail outlets, online
apps, things like that.
Apps, and you applied the highest tax rate, which they suggest might be 15%, that's where you get $61 million. So the numbers that, across that metric vary depending on how conservative, how moderate, or how all-in you might go,
so those
and
are
at what level of tax.
Among the things that you would study in the House, as Robert DeLeo, House Speaker DeLeo has said, you're sort of tapping the brakes on this. What are the next steps now? When's the likelihood, or when is it likely that this issue will be taken up? We know not this session.
Well, the Senate, it won't be taken up perhaps for formal action in this Senate, but the work will begin immediately, and the work has already begun. I've got a research staff that is. I've said, we've got other things before the committee: an economic development bill, a life sciences bill, a racing matter, online lottery. There's a pending proposal that I don't think will get a favorable recommendation this year. But we're looking at those matters in addition now to this matter. And while we will not be in formal session after July 31, we will be in informal sessions until the next sitting of the legislature is sworn in early January 2019. So we will get about the work of this quickly, so that when we do convene for the 2019-2020 session, we can be ready to go. That would be the hope and the potential game plan.
And very quickly, just do you think that a decision would be made then in that next session?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, Rep. Wagner, thanks for your time today.
No problem.